Alright, so the HRApp is quite an interesting initiative for us because of three important reasons. The first one of them being the entire use of technology and using technology as an enabler to solve HR challenges, which is the first time we are experimenting with this and we are actively putting our weight behind this entire solution. And this is essentially an interesting indicator to one very prominent fact that our scale has become, we've grown to a scale that it has almost become impossible for us to cater to volunteer challenges without actively using technology, which is actually quite an interesting conversation to have because now going forward, most of our solutions, at least to HR problems, will and should be enabled by technology for them to be really effective. The other more important conversation is, which is a fundamental shift to the way we take decisions at MAT, because HRApp is the direct outcome of the entire concept of database decision making. So this is the first time in which we actively went out to our stakeholders, which is the volunteer base, conducted an engagement survey and got a lot of quantified results out of it, and the entire objective of the survey was to figure out the level of volunteering experience which we offer at MAD and to figure out a way to actually take it to the next level, right? And third, more important piece, but slightly off the point, this is the first time we're experimenting with an online training kind of a thing, which is slightly off the point, but is something which excites me a lot, right? So moving on to the purpose of the HRApp. So basically the genesis is the engagement survey, and post the survey we basically realized that 30% of our volunteer base rated us on various parameters at 1, 2 or 3 on a scale of 5. And what we intend to do through this solution is to get those 30% of people who rated us on a scale of 1, 2 or 3 to rate us on a scale to rate us at 4 or 5 by the time we do the next engagement survey, which should be somewhere about 2 or 3 months down the line. And HRApp is supposed to be, or pronounced as RAP as Junior puts it, should be an enabler to do that, because that will actively help us to solve volunteering challenges and therefore at MAT, and therefore raise the entire experience volunteers get to an entirely new level. So objective is to ensure that all possible volunteer challenges which are put into the portal are actively looked at, they're actively worked on, and a feasible and a good enough solution is offered, right? Then we said that, you know what, if we are launching it for our volunteers, why not extend it to all our stakeholders, which means that it could be the center authorities, it could be the campus authorities of the colleges from which our volunteers come. So any person who's associated, or our corporate partners or our event partners, any person or any institution which is associated with MAT in some way or the other can log in their challenges, problems, ideas through this particular system. However, that's a slightly different conversation as compared to volunteering challenges, because most of these challenges which are with respect to other stakeholders other than volunteers would be handled directly by the national team. However, this is also one of the purposes of the RAP. So there are two interesting parts to the entire story of the RAP. One is technology, the other piece is ownership, right? So technology piece is pretty simple. Technology is just an enabler in terms of sourcing challenges of the volunteers and actively working upon them. So technology here acts as a clear enabler in terms of us getting to know the problems which exist on the ground. So while doing this entire survey, while doing focus group discussions with the volunteers, we ended up realizing that most of the volunteer challenges are solvable if they are brought up to the right person. But what ends up happening is that essentially volunteer brings it up to the person he is closest to, who may or may not be the best person to solve that problem, right? So that problem gets redirected to the right person, and by the time the loop becomes so large, that problem does not end up getting solved, and that volunteer has a very negative experience in the entire thing, because simply the time from the problem being brought up to the time it gets or does not get solved is so huge that the entire experience of the volunteer while working or while engaging with man actually takes a huge hit, right? The other most important piece is ownership, right? So as I just said, that technology is just an enabler. It is just a tool for us to crowdsource volunteering problems, but the essential part is owning the problem, right? So which is a chance for us to exhibit the quality of leadership through ownership. And once you get a problem on the portal, then the idea is to actively work on it with the different stakeholders associated with that problem, and ensuring that it finally gets solved and is taken to a logical conclusion. That is the entire concept of ownership in the entire and basically the philosophy on which the system has been built. So I'll cover these two aspects in huge amount of detail as I go on with this presentation. So how does it work? So basically, any volunteer has any kind of an idea or a challenge he's facing, or he has an innovative teaching solution in mind, or he has an innovative idea which he does not know how to operationalize, or a challenge which can be which he is not able to solve with his immediate peer group. He can basically bring it up to our notice through two means. One is the SMS based solution, wherein he can just text his problem, challenge, idea, or any part of the experience which will help us enabling him perform better, or help us help him discharge the responsibilities better for the organization. He can text it to this number with the keyword HRApp, and he can just quickly type his message there, or he can email us at HRApp@makerdiff.in. Now, either of these two channels are fine, and whichever channel he chooses to use, the query finally gets logged onto the portal, and actively the national team, the HR team, and the strat, those queries will be visible to everyone in the system, and they'll be actively looked at and solved, right? So the way it works is that the HR fellow will have access to all the queries which are from volunteers from that particular city, and so on the city portal page, only the queries which are from volunteers of that particular city will show up for the HR fellow. For the strat, the aggregate of all the city portals of the region he is in charge of will be what will be viewed by the HR strategist, and at the national level I'll have a dashboard for all the cities and all the regions and all the different kinds of queries which are coming onto this particular portal, right? So basically, why are we as in what is the entire concept of ownership in the entire philosophy of HRApp, right? One most important thing is the sense of family, right? So any person within our city, if he is facing an issue with any part of his experience as MAD, he can bring it up to us through the portal, and we actively be looking at solving that particular issue and ensuring that we help him out with that particular thing, and therefore we get to exhibit the entire quality of entire value of sense of family, right? The second aspect of this entire thing is in terms of the sphere of influence. Most of the queries which will come onto the portal will be outside of your sphere of influence. By sphere of influence, I mean that there will be a lot of typically an HR fellow is responsible for recruitment, for engagement, for organizing city circle, center circle meetings, for organizing exit interviews and stuff like that, right? But most of the queries which come onto the portal might not be with respect to any of these, right? a query could range from something as complex as an interesting idea about the strategy through which we can raise funds for Dream Camp. Think about it, that is something which is outside of the purview of the HR fellow. But the way it will be looked at by the HR fellow will be pretty simple. That once he sees that this person has an interesting idea to raise funds for the Dream Camp, this person redirects the problem, the person to the person who is responsible for raising funds, the CFR fellow in the city, and ensures that the CFR fellow hears the idea out and informs the volunteer about the XYZ amount of constraints which he is facing, which are preventing him from implementing this idea, or ensuring that the conversation goes in a manner in which either the volunteer ends up convincing the CFR fellow about his idea, uh, or the CFR fellow ends up convincing him otherwise, and ensuring when the conversation typically gets over, you guys just speak to that person, ensure that he had a nice experience of sharing his idea, and either his idea was implemented, which automatically means that he'll have a good experience from the entire thing. But even if it wasn't, it should be ensured that he's totally convinced that why his idea cannot be implemented at this stage, or if it can be implemented at some later stage, right? And so giving him the entire feeling of being heard in the organization will be something which will be communicated, right? But the immediate question which comes to us is that if 90% of the problems we will not be able to will be outside of our sphere of influence, then why are we even going ahead with this? Why are we doing this? Why are the HR fellows responsible for this particular thing, right? There are the two most important reasons for this is, one is that we get to exhibit leadership through ownership. The other piece is because we can, and the third piece which basically directly flows from a story which from an experience I had while working with one of my previous organizations, was that there was this entire talk about leaving your stamp on the roll, and it should be felt in your city that if the HR fellow is not around, the volunteer experience dips by a huge value and by a huge amount. And if the HR fellow wasn't around, then the city would almost stop functioning. That is the level of ownership, that is the level of stretch we can do to actually ensure that every volunteer in the city has a positive experience, right? So, which brings me to the last point of ensuring that the loop finally gets closed on all the challenges, or all the ideas, all the feedback which are logged onto the portal, and which will in a way end up ensuring that the adoption rate of the portal is pretty high, and the volunteers have a very positive experience about the entire thing.